Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Franco from Frank Analysis. And I just figured I should make a quick video about an article I came across by someone named Chris Legion, who used to be a member of INN, Independent News Network. And in that article, he's talking about why he's stepping away from being an online leftist. All right, there's a meaning to that, right? Online leftist means you're really involved in the community that's online. You watch a lot of independent media, and you sometimes go to these events that's organized by these online commentators or journalists. And I still think that it's a good thing to go to these events, but we got to do more than just that, right? That's a point I've made a couple times on this show, and I have been promoting a lot of these events that are gonna go on, like free Julian Assange events. There's one happening in April in DC, and there's a whole bunch of Rage Against the War Machine events that are happening across the country. And like I mentioned in my previous videos, just because I share concerns about some of the people who might be there, that does not mean I'm telling you to not go. I never said that. I said if you feel it in your heart, then you should go. And hopefully you also organize your own local events throughout the country. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with what he was saying here, because I think that it's something a lot of us should be more mindful of. All right, because a lot of people are. Chris Legion's not the only one who I've spoke to. Well, I haven't spoke to Chris Legion about this, but I've heard from other people talking about how they want to step away because they find the online left community too toxic, and they feel like their time is better spent just moving away from all that toxicity that's online on Twitter and the YouTube comment sections, and just focusing more on their family, but also not giving up their ideology and not giving up their activism. All right, so the title is Why I Left the Online Left, My Departure from the Online Left and Its Inability to Solve Its Own Internal Insecurities. Before I begin, I would like to express that nothing I'm about to discuss in this article is directed to anyone over at INN and RBN, that's Independent News Network and Revolutionary Blackout Network, who have supported me these past several years. My good friends India and Reef have been nothing but supportive of my opinions and on the state of the current political climate and the challenges that many of us face on our side of the ideological spectrum. As for those of you who actually care, I haven't been around the online left spaces as of late. After a frustrating time dealing with heavy-handed censorship on both Twitter and many other platforms as the massive amounts of snowflake hypersensitive online leftists, I have decided to leave the online left and move on to take care of my family and focus on my personal and professional life path. Although my ideology still remains unwavering, I refuse to be part of a movement that isolates itself from any hopes of substantial change. From social dems who seem to be more obsessed with keeping the activist left focused on irrelevant distractions, creepy sex pest Marxist cult leaders who like to take advantage of those under them who suffer from desperate circumstances. And if you know what he's referring to, there is a lot of evidence to support what happened there with the CPI. To those who start unnecessary divisions over non-sequential historical events, we can also add the many times I lost followers over simply chuckling over the ridiculous term of MAGA communism. To be honest, it was an unrealistic attempt to court the right, who would only make up arms against the notion of ever entertaining the thought of having a communist society. It was disturbing to see many fragile followers stop following me for that disagreement, even though we all agreed on 99.9% of other ideological takes. Now that right there, guys, you're unfollowing something for calling something out about MAGA communism or something that whatever's happening at the CPI, you're just voicing that you think that this is unjust or that this is counterproductive or that this isn't going to work. and then you get canceled by these people. A lot of these people uh, say that they don't agree with wokeism, they don't agree with cancel culture, but then they go ahead and unfollow these people and treat them like aliens for disagreeing. And I've experienced this several times, and even just recently for just talking about concerns that I have with some of the speakers and some of their rhetoric or some of the criminal activity that they've had in their past. Um, a lot of you guys wanted to stop listening to me, or were very reactionary, or were thinking that I was trying to knock down an event while disregarding the careful words I chose, right? Like how I said I'm not telling you guys to not go. While I said we need to do more than that, we need to have more local events. And in past videos, I said we need to do more than just have events. We need to actually talk to these people that don't spend time online. And that's something that Chris Legion also mentions, is that the online left is a lot smaller than we think. It doesn't make up, I don't think, like 1% even of the country, of the United States. So we're obviously doing something wrong here if we're not, if we've reached a threshold. So Chris goes on to say once again, it was just more proof of what I expected in my current evaluations of the online left. Combine these instances with three-letter agency ops, and we have a perfect recipe for delusional perceived trust issues. I actually had one comrade who I fully supported who decided one day out of the blue that I was an op. One second, guys. Let me check my mic. Want to make sure everything is okay on that end. And I think that's also something really weak that some people do. Whenever there's a disagreement, we go ahead and call the other person an op, even though there's no evidence of that. So needless to say, I was canceled by that individual. Many times I've reached out to many of those on the activist online left. And no matter how many times we agreed on an issue, it seemed that many of them were more concerned with the idolization and praise of themselves rather than the actual causes they were advocating for on their daily live streams. Thin-skinned online leftists would often invite me on their shows, but when I couldn't make it for personal issues like working 12-hour shifts at my legalized slavery job, the very same thin-skinned online leftists would take it personal, and in many cases would exclude me from events and protests they were scheduling and advocating for. The only time I seemed to gain support from higher profile leftists was when a tweet of mine went viral, which basically confirmed my suspicion that they were just in the game for a back rub from their audiences. Yeah, and I gotta share that sentiment. A lot of people, like when I do something that your team agrees with, you guys love me to death. When I yelled at AOC, when I called out a long time ago, because it's not necessary anymore to do that, to point out that water is wet. But when I would call out the TYT and all those people, a lot of you guys were loving me. But when I give constructive criticism to some of the people online that you guys listen to, you guys become so reactionary towards me. You unsub, or you unfollow, or you make up all these conspiracy theories about me. And I mean, I don't think that's right. I think we should be more respectful about the other person, what the other person is saying, and looking at their history, at all the other things that they've done, and looking at how, like, what is this person's intentions? What are they trying to do? Me personally, I'm treating this as a hobby right now. I'm not trying to do this as a full-time job. Right? I don't care if I grow or lose subscribers at this point. All right, so let's keep reading. When my account was censored and none of my tweets weren't hitting well, they were really nowhere to be found. Not a single mention or concern. Not a single amount of support with the exception of my comrades at INN. The levels of distrust by the left have pushed away potential support from others who are eager beginners just learning of the leftist ideology and its interpretation of life. Yes, technically, I was new to the movement and they told me to get lost. So in many cases, people just wanted to be a part of a substantial change, but were turned away by the left. So what's the question? How do you grow a movement when everyone who doesn't fit the exact criteria of leftist excellence doesn't get accepted and is somehow perceived as a threat looking to dismantle it? Now fast forward to another issue which has pushed me out of this space. Besides the unscrupulous infighting which gets the left nowhere, I've noticed that the left likes to talk tough with no action or a real concerted effort to fight for the cause in question. Example, telling people to punch a Nazi, but too afraid to pressure progressives in Congress. The online left needs to come together on their present economic interests rather than just complaining on their YouTube channels. They feel that screaming into a bullhorn, getting beat up, or being unjustly detained by the police would somehow get them sympathy from a hypocritical populace who has no issue with voting for a sexual deviant president. They think that somehow they would get noticed by the average American who has no issue with supporting the corrupt Eastern European country that has Nazis in it. The BLM protest proved nothing, only that dissent will never be considered by any liberal or Western leftists. And those BLM protests really did die down, didn't they, guys? And I remember going to these BLM events locally in my area, outside of high schools and stuff, and anyone could come up and speak. And that's the thing about protests. Like you don't have to invite a big extravagant speaker to come in. You can organize one around your neighborhood and people can come together if they agree with you on the cause. But at that event, I said we should keep protesting this even after Joe Biden becomes president, because just because he becomes president doesn't mean that the issue gets solved. Don't forget that he was a segregationist and blah, 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 blah. You guys know I would be preaching to the choir here, but the BLM protests died down. They don't have them anymore outside of these high schools in the county where I'm from. Let's continue here. Currently, there are only two outcomes that can produce results. One is waiting for the empire to fall, hoping that the left has a seat at the table when a new government forms, or the formation of a well-trained and organized militia that can actively stand against the tyranny of a nation which is inherently corrupted to the core. And I will say that that's not an option that I think would be the best, because our military is really advanced and surveillance is rampant and they would shut things down before they even get anywhere. Let's go back to the article. Complaining and yelling into the void on YouTube isn't going to cut it. A lot of people online are doing that right now on YouTube. Yelling in front of the Capitol steps and being mad because an irrelevant member of Congress is dancing and his dancing is not going to cut it. And over here, Chris Legion, I'm pretty sure, is talking about me. And I agree with him. That is not going to cut it. Like me doing that, like if you ever get the opportunity to call out somebody in Congress for not actually helping people, that is not, that should not be the only thing we should do. We need to do a lot more than that. Right? We need to raise awareness. We need to have a more conscious society so that if we ever do get a new government, we don't make the same mistakes as before. And that's not enough to change people's minds. Like me doing that's not enough at all. It is enough to score points, though, for certain tribes that we have on the left, certain subsections, but we got to do way more than just that. He goes on to say that marching down a city street where you need to get a permit and you are only allowed to protest when they tell you it's okay is not going to cut it. My disdain for the right and its trickery pretending to care about Western corruption is justifiably true, but they are under no delusion that dissent can only be formed by fighting on all fronts, including having an armed militia. Not saying we need to go to war with our country, but the seriousness of the left and its commitment into trying to change the nation to a more social friendly democracy is unrealistically evident. Even discussions of the tactic of carrying out small acts of civil disobedience are met with a vigorous debate and condemnation by many different online Western left voices. You wouldn't believe all the infighting I would see in DMs. Every time an organizer would try to organize a positive event, you would always count like clockwork for a heated exchange to take place from within. Like bickering teenagers, they would fight over where to have events, who was grifting and who wasn't an op and who wasn't. They would produce team sport rivalries between factions. One of the most annoying parts about the online left is that if you say the wrong word, the leftist word police will extract a heavy toll on your insensitivity, which could get you excommunicated for life on Twitter. We've seen that, right? I'm making fun here, but it's an extreme laughable scenario, if not just simply sad. You can say that this is just normal behavior for the online left since I've been witnessing it regularly. I honestly feel that the online left is not serious about changing the world and shaping the political landscape, or the very least, it's completely ego-driven. Plenty of egos out there online, right? A lot of these commentators who care more about being right than, actually making a change and admitting when they're wrong. He goes on to say, so what have I been doing since I've been gone? Well, as I have been away for a while to do my own thing, I have deleted all my accounts and I have kept my personal accounts. From what I have observed is that the left is nowhere to be found on social media. Not on TikTok, not on YouTube, not on Facebook, not Twitter, or any other platform. Unless you're Jimmy Dore or some other larger channel, you can basically expect to have a maximum of 50K followers. YouTube channels of people giving their dogs baths have more followers than the average leftist YouTuber. I've seen channels with men showering their Laserdisc collection have 500,000 followers. So why is this happening? Well, here are some of the reasons. And before I get into that, I just gotta say, if you're seeing this lack of growth, it's not just censorship that's happening. Because we had to look beyond just online. We got to look at what people who aren't like involved online with these leftist circles, like how their ideology is evolving. And a lot of people are not evolving as much as we'd like. And the 2020 election is evident of that. And the current political climate is also evident of that. People still thinking that a president can save us, people still thinking that a certain political party will save them, even though they don't take into account election integrity. It looks like, and also, as Chris Legion was pointing out, all this team sports, fighting, and people being ego-driven, it means we have to do something different. We have to do something different from just going on in front of the camera and just talking about what's happening in the news. Right? We actually have to become more self-aware of ourselves so that we don't become distracted with all this infighting, so that we don't have to deal with all these toxic people. And that's the reason why I decided to refocus what I was going to do on this channel. I'm no longer doing the same kind of videos I was doing before, where I'm talking about, oh, here's what happened in the news, blah, 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 blah. Can you imagine what this person said, Kyle Kalinske? Can you imagine that? How could he say that? Blah, blah, blah. Look at how much of a, I don't know, whatever he is, a grifter. Like, that's not going to get us anywhere other than having cheerleaders or people who are in your tribe just cheering on with you about things that you guys already know. These confirmation bias things. So what I decided to refocus this channel on is to talk more about things in psychology, still talking about some events happening in the world, and talking about principles and other things like that. But you guys see, I'm trying to do more book reviews. I'm trying to help people become more self-aware, right? Because if we can't fix ourselves, then we're not going to fix the world. All right, let's see what he said. So here are some reasons for why he thinks this is happening, in terms of why on the online left isn't going anywhere. And that's that: number one, the system will never push you into the algorithm unless you already have a celebrity or a professional status, or you just totally sell out. All right, so if you join mainstream media, or you aspire to become like a pundit for a state media or things like that. Number two, you lose support from potential viewers because you alienate anyone who doesn't agree with you 100% of the time you're on social media. All right, that's why I notice some people are really afraid to say things that they actually feel, what they actually think, and so they just stay quiet and they let their audience determine for them what to think. Right? I think that it's really a disservice to your audience members when you're like, make a poll to get their thoughts on something before they make a video, and then they're doing those polls because they want to decide for themselves what to think before they make a video about it, instead of thinking for themselves and analyzing the situation themselves, or having conversations with people. Rather, they're just going wherever the wind blows when they do those polls like that, and then make a video later. Number three, you cancel potential supporters because you're hypersensitive over words that may offend others. Number four, you trust no one because anyone can be a potential three-letter op. Number five, you establish an unrealistic criteria of acceptance, which turns off people from joining your movement. Number six, you fail to realize that the left is an extremely small movement online and has no say in any form of substantial change on all platforms, which are openly censoring them. Number seven, you want cheerleaders instead of revolutionaries and potential newcomers who are interested in leftist ideology. Number eight, those in power are not scared of you, but you think they are, that somehow at any moment they will fall. Number nine, you don't study your enemies, their tactics, and their faults. All you do is complain about them. Number 10, you identify with your viewers' pain, but you have no solutions for them other than just screaming that everything is unfair. So he says, where I go from here. I've realized that the best course of action is to make change where my strengths lay. I recently been focusing my energy on a new laundry business I will be acquiring. And I gotta say, Chris, if you're watching this, which you said that you don't really watch independent media anymore, so I don't blame you if you don't see this, but I wish you luck. If that message ever gets to you, I wish you luck. Inspired by activists like Rome from RBN, I will be setting days where I can help homeless and low-income families wash their clothes for free. Giving back through mutual aid and working in small part to make some minor changes in people's lives. If things take off and we purchase more locations, we can expand the program to more low-income neighborhoods. I feel my time is better spent doing this rather than looking for ideological cheerleaders on Twitter. Once again, I'd like to thank everyone at Indie News for their unwavering support, and for everyone else, I hope a better future arises from the chaotic darkness of our current time. I will be continuing to be writing on Substack with future updates. See you in the next article. So I was on hiatus for a bit too. And I'm not making as many videos as I used to. And because I share some of those same concerns that Chris was sharing, and some of the same gripes. And I feel like my energy is better spent on improving myself and focusing on my personal life, focusing on my job, focusing on my family, focusing on my friends. And I gotta say, my life felt a lot less stressful from how it felt 2 years ago, when I was more I was putting more energy into making videos, and I was caring a lot more about what all these other different groups were thinking, and making videos complaining about these people. And I quite frankly think that a lot of us would do a lot better if we did stop taking some of these online channels and all that, all the fighting, less seriously, and focus more on ourselves and improving ourselves, making sure you're still informing yourself, making sure you read as much as possible, read as many books as you can so you can get a bigger picture of what's happening in the world, so that you can get a better perspective, so that you have a better idea of what the truth is. Because if you're too attached to ideology, that's going to prevent you from growing. It's going to prevent you from seeing things objectively. So yeah, I mean, that's the biggest message that you can take away from here, is that we can't fix this world if we can't fix ourselves. All right, I'm just scrolling through to see what some of you guys have said, and there is a lot of interesting things that you guys have been saying here. But yeah, I think that books on philosophy, epistemology, psychology, books on self-help, books on spirituality, all of those can really benefit us. Reading about history and not just attaching ourselves to just one perspective, because then you could come across another book, another historical book that then gives you a different side of what happened in that history during that time, or whatever it is that you're reading about. Steven Torres says, boom, just screaming about how everything is unfair. Despair porn is all most indie media offers. Yeah, I agree with that. YouTube is entertainment, is what Born Sinner Cold World said. Yes, you can learn things, but yeah. I mean, I'm not taking away from that. Like, you can learn things here and there that people are gonna say. The problem is when people stay attached, and then that becomes their life, and that's all they're doing. All they're doing just becomes them consuming one video after the next, and then they're not actually taking any action to improve the world. All right, you receive some of that information. Now, what are you gonna do with it? Plus, some of the information that you get from independent media on YouTube becomes redundant. It's just all these channels repeating the same thing, or it's just similar situations, that it just doesn't surprise you at the end of the day, right? Reading about what AOC did on such and such day, versus what she did, like, the other month or the other year. Like, it shouldn't surprise you after you already pick up on her behavior, right? I don't think that it needs like a full-on analysis at that point, if you already understand what kind of person she is and how she moves. And then, yeah, you go on to say, folks who watch these videos are customers, not necessarily comrades. Yeah, and I think that some of that money can be better spent on mutual aid, or giving money to Palestinians, or giving money to people suffering in the global south, or giving money to people that are suffering here in the United States. There's still places within the US that don't have clean water. There's still a lot of homelessness. You can go out, and I think your money would be better spent buying food for a homeless person and having a conversation with them and learning from them. I definitely think that would be better. What else? To me, I think that if you're doing independent media, it's best that it should be treated like a hobby, and you don't let it consume you. All right, that goes for the viewers, that goes for the content creators as well. Otherwise, you become too consumed with drama that goes on, and then nothing actually gets done. But yeah, anything else that I go on saying will just become redundant. James Boyajan, thank you very much for the donation on Rockfin. He says, I don't know that I agree with you on some issues, but I commend your effort to be different and hopefully make a real difference in people's lives. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And the donations that I have there are really optional. I actually urge you to use that money on any of the other things that I mentioned earlier. That it would be better uh, than just donating to me. All right. Uh, all right. That's pretty much all I have to say. Take care, guys. Um, and I'm glad I was able to amplify that voice for Chris Legion. Stay informed. Take care.